They tore down my chicken coop while I was out of town. Didn't call, didn't ask, didn't even leave so much as a voicemail. And somehow they thought I'd just come back, shrug, and move on like nothing happened. What they didn't realize, what none of them bothered to check, was that the one thing they depended on more than anything else ran straight through my land. And I'm not the kind of person you'd push aside and forget about. My name's Evelyn Harper. I'm 68 years old, and I've lived on the same half-acre stretch of land just outside Maple Ridge, Ohio, for a little over 30 years now. Long before the subdivision behind me showed up with their matching mailboxes and their neat little rules about what color your shutters can be. Back when I first moved in, this whole area was open fields, dirt roads, and neighbors who waved instead of filed complaints. I raised my kids here, buried my husband here, planted every tree, built every fence, and yeah, raised every one of those chickens they decided to get rid of like they were trash. That coop wasn't just some backyard project. It was something my husband Daniel built with his own hands about 10 years before he passed. He used old barnwood from a place his uncle used to own, sanded it down, fitted it together piece by piece, even carved little initials into the corner beam where no one would notice, unless they knew where to look. After he was gone, that coop became, I don't know, something steady, something that still felt like him. I kept it going, expanded it, took care of those birds like they mattered, because they did. I had about 20 hens, heritage breeds mostly, nothing fancy, but strong, healthy layers. And every Saturday morning, I'd collect eggs, clean them up, pack them into cartons, and folks from around the neighborhood, yes, even from that HOA, would swing by and pick some up. It wasn't a big business, but it covered groceries, paid a few bills, gave me something to do that felt real. People liked it too, said store eggs didn't taste the same, said mine reminded them of how things used to be. That's the part that gets me. You know, they knew me. These weren't strangers driving by. These were people who'd stood in my yard holding cartons, smiling, asking about the chickens, petting them even. I remember one of them, Karen Whitlock. I think she was the HOA treasurer back then, standing right by the fence one morning saying, "Evelyn, you're a blessing to this neighborhood." Truly funny how fast that kind of sentiment disappears once rules and property values get involved. Anyway, about 2 summers ago, I took my grandkids up to Michigan for a few weeks. My daughter insisted, said I needed a break, said the kids wanted time with Grandma near the lake, and I'll admit, it sounded nice. Before I left, I had everything set up, automatic feeders. A neighbor from down the road, Mr. Collins, agreed to stop by every couple of days, just check on things, collect eggs if there were too many. It wasn't my first time leaving the place unattended, and I trusted my setup. Those 4 weeks went by easy. Sunshine, fishing, sticky fingers from melted popsicles. The kind of quiet that makes you forget the world can be complicated. I didn't think about the coop much. Just assumed everything back home was fine, waiting for me like it always had. Then I pulled into my driveway. At first, I thought I'd taken a wrong turn, which doesn't make much sense considering I've driven that road thousands of times. But that's how it felt. Something was off. Too open, too empty. I parked, stepped out, and just stood there for a second, trying to understand what I was looking at, or what I wasn't. Where the coop had been, there was nothing. No structure, no fencing, no birds, no sound. Just splintered wood scattered across the ground, and pieces of chicken wire twisted up like someone had ripped it apart in a hurry. It looked like a storm had come through, except the house was untouched. The trees were fine. Everything else, exactly where it should be. I remember walking forward slowly, like if I moved too fast, it might suddenly snap back into place. Like maybe I was just tired from the drive and seeing things wrong. But no, every step made it clearer. It was gone. And then I saw the paper taped right onto my kitchen window, slightly peeling at the corners from the heat. Some official-looking notice stamped with the HOA's letterhead. I pulled it off, hands already starting to shake, and read it once, then again, slower this time, because I honestly couldn't believe what it was saying. Livestock structures have been removed due to health code violations and repeated noise complaints. The area has been cleared to maintain residential standards and improve neighborhood well-being. Improve neighborhood well-being. I actually laughed. Just a short, sharp sound that didn't feel like it came from me, because what they meant, what that whole thing really said, was that they decided my life didn't fit their idea of what the neighborhood should look like. So, they erased it. No call, no letter ahead of time, no chance to fix whatever supposed violation they'd made up. They just showed up and took it. I dropped the notice on the counter and went back outside, walked the perimeter where the Coop used to stand, crouched down, picked up a piece of what I recognized immediately, one of Daniel's beams, the one with the little notch on the side where he'd miscut it the first time and refused to throw it away, because in his words, it's still good wood, Evie just needs a second chance. I held that piece in my hands for a long time, and somewhere between the shock and the anger, something else started settling in. Something quieter, colder. Because this wasn't just about a Coop or even the chickens. It was about being pushed out. About someone deciding they had the authority to rewrite the rules of a place I'd called home long before they ever showed up. I didn't storm over there. Didn't pick up the phone right away. I've lived long enough to know that rushing and angry rarely gets you what you want. No, I took my time. I cleaned up what I could, stacked the salvageable wood, sat on my back steps as the sun started to go down, and just thought about the people who'd done this, about what they believed they could get away with, and about what they'd forgotten. Because while they were busy tearing something down, they never once looked at the bigger picture. They never asked themselves how things actually worked around here. And that was their first mistake. That night, I didn't sleep much. Not because I was overwhelmed, not in the way you'd expect anyway, but because my mind wouldn't stop turning, piece by piece, like it was laying something out in front of me I hadn't fully looked at in years. See, when you live on land as long as I have, you don't just know your house. You know the way things connect, the quiet agreements, the little details nobody pays attention to until they suddenly matter. And one of those details ran straight through my driveway. The subdivision behind my property, Willowbrook Estates, they call it, all trimmed hedges and matching fences, only has one real access point for large vehicles. Fire trucks can come in through the main road, sure, but garbage trucks, those big, heavy, slow-turning things, they don't fit through the decorative entrance they built for show. Too narrow, too many curves. So years ago, before half those houses were even finished, the developers came to me with a request. They wanted to run waste collection through my side driveway, a straight shot from the old county road into the back of their neighborhood. In return, they offered a small easement agreement. Nothing fancy, just a legal acknowledgement that they could pass through under certain conditions. I remember Daniel and I talking it over at the kitchen table. He said, "As long as it stays ours, Evie. As long as we're the ones allowing it, not the other way around." So, we signed it, kept the terms tight, made sure it was clear, access was permitted, not guaranteed. After Daniel passed, I never thought much about it again. The trucks came once a week, early mornings, rumbling past like clockwork, and I'd just wave if I happened to be outside. It was one of those things that worked, because no one tried to push it until now. I got up before sunrise the next morning, poured myself a cup of coffee, and walked out to the edge of the driveway, stood there looking at that stretch of gravel they'd been using like it belonged to them. It didn't take long to make the decision. Honestly, it felt less like deciding and more like remembering something I'd almost forgotten. By noon, I was at the hardware store. Now, I'm not reckless. I don't jump into things without knowing exactly what I'm doing. I made a couple calls first. One to an old friend of Daniel's, who still works in property law. Another to the county clerk's office to pull up the original easement documents. I wanted to be absolutely certain before I made a move. And sure enough, everything checked out. The agreement was conditional, revocable under circumstances involving misuse or conflict. And I'd say tearing down someone's property without consent qualifies as both. So, I acted. I had 2 concrete posts installed on either side of the driveway entrance. Solid, waist high, set deep into the ground, so they weren't going anywhere. Then I ran a thick steel chain between them, looped it tight, and locked it with a heavy-duty padlock that clicked shut with a kind of finality I can still hear if I think about it. It didn't look dramatic, just a simple barrier really, but I knew what it meant. Monday morning, right on schedule, the garbage truck showed up. I was already outside, sitting in a chair near the porch, coffee in hand, watching. The driver slowed as he approached, probably thinking I'd just left something in the way by accident. But then he saw the posts, the chain, the lock. He stopped, got out, walked up a few steps and called out, "Ma'am, we need access through here." I smiled. Not kindly, not cruel, just evenly. "No you don't," I said. "Not anymore." He blinked at me, confused. "This is our route." "It was," I corrected, taking a sip of coffee. "Private property access revoked." There was a pause, the kind where someone's trying to figure out if you're serious. Then he shrugged, muttered something under his breath, and turned back toward the truck. A few minutes later, it was gone. Just like that. By Wednesday, the phone call started. First, it was a resident. I didn't recognize the number, but the tone gave it away immediately. Polite at first, the kind of forced politeness people use when they think you're being difficult. "Hi, this is Megan from Willowbrook. I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding about the trash pickup." "There hasn't," I said calmly. "Your trucks can't use my driveway anymore." A pause, then a tighter voice. "But that's the only access point. I'm aware." Another call came an hour later. This one from the property management company. More formal, more careful with their words, but the same underlying assumption that I would cooperate if they just explained things properly. "Mrs. Harper, we understand there's been a disruption in service, and we'd like to resolve this quickly." "You should have thought about that before you demolished my coop," I interrupted. Silence on the other end. Then a shift in tone. "We'll need to look into that matter separately." "No," I said, leaning back in my chair, feeling that calm settle in deeper. "You won't, because it's the same matter." By Thursday, things had escalated. 3 cars pulled up near my driveway just after lunch. Out stepped Patricia Hale, the HOA president. Tall woman, always dressed like she was about to attend a meeting, even when she was just walking her dog, along with 2 board members and a man in a suit I assumed was their lawyer. They didn't wave. Patricia walked up first, heels clicking against the gravel, and stopped a few feet from the chain. "Mrs. Harper," she said, voice tight but controlled, "you are currently obstructing essential municipal services." I let that sit for a second, then stood up slowly. "No," I replied. "I'm protecting my property." The lawyer stepped forward, already opening a folder, like he'd rehearsed this. "Under local regulations, interference with waste management is not applicable here." I cut in, my voice still even, because this is not a municipal access road. It's a private easement, one that I have full legal authority to revoke. I walked inside for a moment, grabbed the documents I printed, and came back out, handed them directly to Patricia. "You might want to read page 3, I added, "clause about revocation under conflict of use." She didn't take it right away, just stared at me like she was trying to decide whether this was bluff or not. Then she snatched the papers, flipped through them quickly, her expression tightening with each line. "This is ridiculous," one of the board members muttered behind her. "No," I said softly, almost to myself. "What's ridiculous is thinking you could tear down someone's livelihood and expect nothing to happen." Patricia looked up then, eyes sharp. "We had multiple complaints. Noise, sanitation, and you had my phone number." I shot back. "You had my address. You had 7 years of buying eggs from me. You could have knocked on my door." That landed. I could see it in the way her jaw clenched just slightly. The lawyer cleared his throat. "We can pursue a court order if necessary." "Go ahead," I said, meeting his gaze. "While you're at it, you might want to prepare for a countersuit. Destruction of property, loss of income, and the disappearance of registered livestock." That got their attention. I could almost see the shift happen in real time. The moment they realized this wasn't going to be handled with a warning letter and a quick fix. Because while they were standing there, arguing about access, their neighborhood was already starting to feel the consequences. And it was only going to get worse. By the time the weekend rolled around, the situation had turned from inconvenient to completely unmanageable. And I don't say that with any exaggeration. I mean, full trash bins spilling over onto sidewalks, black bags splitting open under the heat, flies gathering in thick clouds like something out of a bad summer memory. You could smell it from the edge of my property. That sour, heavy kind of odor that just sits in the air and doesn't move. I didn't have to go over there to know what was happening. I could hear it in the tone of the phone calls, the ones I stopped answering after a while. At first, it was frustration. People assuming this was some kind of temporary dispute, something that would be sorted out by Monday. But by Saturday afternoon, that tone had shifted into something else, something closer to panic. And the thing about planned communities like Willowbrook, they run on appearances. Clean streets, trimmed lawns, everything looking just right for the next showing, the next buyer, the next appraisal. Take that away, even for a few days, and the whole illusion starts to crack. I did drive past once though, late Sunday evening, just before sunset. I didn't stop, just enough to take it in. Trash bins lined the streets like a losing battle. Lids pushed open, bags piled beside them when there was no more room. A couple of raccoons darted between driveways, bold as anything. And I saw one woman standing near the curb with a scarf pressed over her nose, shaking her head like she couldn't quite believe this was happening in her neighborhood. I'll admit, part of me felt something close to satisfaction. Not joy, not exactly, but a sense that the scale had finally tipped back into balance. Monday morning, they came back. Same group as before, but different energy this time. Less authority, more urgency. Patricia didn't bother with the slow walk up the driveway. She came straight to the chain, stopped just short of it, and called out, "Evelyn, we need to talk." I was already outside tending to what little space I had cleared for rebuilding, turning over soil, planning where the new coop would go eventually. I wiped my hands on a towel, took my time walking over. "I figured you might," I said. There was a moment where she seemed to search for the right tone, something firm enough to maintain control, but not so sharp it would make things worse. In the end, she settled somewhere in the middle. "This situation has escalated beyond what anyone anticipated." I raised an eyebrow. "Funny how that works." The lawyer stepped forward again, but he looked different now, less polished, like he hadn't slept much. "We're prepared to offer a resolution," he said. I didn't respond right away, just crossed my arms and waited. Patricia took a breath. "The association is willing to rebuild your chicken coop, replace your livestock, and provide financial compensation for your losses." It was exactly what you'd expect, a clean fix, something they could write into a report, tie up neatly, and move past. And for a split second, just a second, I thought about it. Thought about having Daniel's coop back the way it was, about hearing the chickens again in the early morning, about going back to the rhythm I'd built over the years. But then I remembered the notice on my window, the wording, the assumption, the complete lack of respect. So I shook my head. "No," I said simply. That caught them off guard. You could see it ripple through the group. That brief moment of confusion when the solution they expected to work didn't. Patricia frowned. "I'm not sure I understand. This addresses—" "No, it doesn't," I cut in, not raising my voice, just holding steady. "It fixes what you broke. It doesn't address how you broke it." Silence stretched out between us. Not comfortable, not hostile either, just heavy. Then I stepped a little closer to the chain, resting my hand lightly against one of the concrete posts. "You didn't call. You didn't ask. You didn't even give me the chance to respond to whatever complaints you claim you had. You made a decision about my property like it was yours to manage." Patricia's expression tightened again, but she didn't interrupt. "So no," I continued. "I'm not interested in going back to the way things were. That version of this arrangement is over." The lawyer glanced at her, then back at me. "Then what exactly are you proposing?" And there it was, the question that shifted everything. I let a small pause settle in, just long enough to make sure they were listening. "You want access to this driveway," I said. tapping the post lightly. You need it, actually. Without it, your entire waste system falls apart. No one argued. So here's how it works now, I went on. You get a new agreement, formal, monthly, $3,000 for continued access. One of the board members actually let out a short disbelieving laugh. That's outrageous. I looked at him, not angry, not amused, just steady. So is demolishing someone's property without consent. That shut him up. Patricia studied me for a long moment, and I could see the calculation happening behind her eyes. Cost versus consequence. Pride versus practicality. She didn't like it, not even a little, but she understood it. And if we refuse, she asked finally. I shrugged just slightly. Then the chain stays right where it is. No threats, no raised voices. Just a fact. The kind you can't argue with. Another pause, longer this time. The air felt thick, like the moment before a storm breaks. Then Patricia exhaled, slow and controlled. We'll need a written contract. You'll get one, I said. And access resumes once it's signed. I gave a small nod, and the first payment clears. That was it. No dramatic handshake, no sudden shift back to friendliness. Just a quiet understanding that the balance of power had changed, and there was no undoing that. They left not long after. 2 days later, the contract was signed. By the end of the week, the chain came down temporarily. Anyway, the trucks rolled through again. And little by little, things went back to looking the way they used to. But not quite the same, because now every month, like clockwork, a check shows up. $3,000. And I cash it. I rebuilt the coop too. Not exactly the same, but close enough. I used what I could salvage, added a few improvements, made it stronger. Sometimes when the light hits it just right in the late afternoon, I can almost see Daniel standing there again, measuring twice, smiling to himself, like he always did when something came together the way he wanted. And as for Willowbrook, they still keep things neat, still follow their rules, still talk about property values and community standards. But they don't come onto my land anymore without asking. And every now and then, when one of them drives past while I'm out collecting eggs, they slow down just a little. Not enough to wave, just enough to remember. Now here's the thing. Some people hear the story and say I went too far, that I could have taken the offer, rebuilt, moved on without dragging things out the way I did. Others say it's exactly what they would have done, that sometimes the only way people learn boundaries is when it costs them something real. So I'm curious what you think. Was it justice, or was it revenge that went a step too far? Let me know in the comments. And if you've ever dealt with neighbors or an HOA that thought they could push you around,